Well, welcome to Theology Unbound. This is episode number 60, and it is kind of a first, sort of. We will probably put this in our perspectives category, but we might label it as missions. Today, I have the opportunity to sit down with Chris and Sarah Suits, and they are partaking on a journey to London from the United States with their beautiful family. And we're just going to sit down and talk about the calling of God on their life, how God has ministered to them up to this point, and how they know they're called to go to London, other than it being in their blood. So we hope you enjoy this episode, and we will be right back. All right. Well, thank you both for taking the time to come on. We are not in the typical Theology Unbound studio, which is in my office, because it's a very small space. We are in Buell Bible Church Sanctuary today, and we're really happy and blessed to have this opportunity. Now, we ran into each other a few weeks ago at a conference in Colorado at Ed Taylor's church. It was personally my first time meeting you, but you guys both have a history with Jackie and Kathy.
Yeah. So maybe you.
Yeah, more so
best.
with Kathy. We actually invited Kathy to speak at a women's conference that we did back in 2023.
Yeah. Great.
So, yeah.
Great. So there's already a relationship there. That's fantastic.
Yeah.
So for the sake, really the goal and the sake of why we're sitting down and having the conversation today is just so our listeners, which is mostly our church congregation, can get to know the both of you a little bit, who you are and what you're doing for the sake of the gospel and everything that God's called both of you to. Yeah. So we can we'll just start at the beginning. Okay. Probably 1981.
Close.
Yeah, close.
I was born in 78.
Oh, man. I was being charitable.
Yes, we appreciate it.
That's a good guess. Yes. So let's see. I think probably the best place to start is just, so I didn't grow up in a Christian home, kind of just was very much living for the world. And I got radically saved in college.
Okay.
I was going to Oregon State University, and she had grown up in a Christian home, but wasn't really walking with the Lord. And so we were just kind of living together in sin, partying.
Did you guys meet in college?
We met in Southern Oregon. That's where we both were growing up. Okay. And we both worked in the Rogue Valley Mall. If anyone's familiar with that area. So we met, and I was going to college in Southern Oregon University, and I was transferring up to Oregon State to do an engineering degree. And she came and lived with me, moved in with me. And so we were living together. I knew her parents weren't happy about it, but I was of the frame of mind. I wasn't against God, just knew nothing about it. I met a guy in one of my classes that, come to find out later, was praying for me to get saved. He invited me to a ministry where at the First Baptist Church once a week, they get together, they play basketball, and he knew I liked to play basketball, and then the college pastor would give a devotional. And so I was being introduced to Jesus without really knowing what I was listening to. And at one point, I decided I wanted to ask my wife to marry me, or my girlfriend at the time. And I thought the right thing would be to get her dad's blessing. So I reached out to him, and he very gracefully told me why he couldn't bless our marriage, the things that were wrong in our life. Yeah. And I came away from that conversation with just my eyes open for the first time to a lot of things that weren't right. And the first person I thought to talk to was that college pastor. So I made an appointment with him the next day. And all I can say is I came out of that appointment saved. I realized I was messed up. I needed to be saved from my sin, and Jesus was the answer to that. And it radically changed my life. Everything that I was looking for and not finding in the world, I knew that I had found in Jesus instantly. Yeah. And I'm a very kind of black and white, disciplined individual. So when he was telling me, well, you guys got to stop living together and having sex out of marriage and the things that you're not supposed to do as a Christian, I was like, okay, cool. We need to not do this. Right. And so we it didn't make a lot of worldly sense, but we moved out from from each other. And I just saw God do really miraculous things in those first 6 months before we were married, where we were putting him first, like Matthew 6, seek first the kingdom of God and his righteousness, and all these other things will be given to you. I saw that literally happen. So I knew right from the beginning that Jesus was real. I want to follow him, and everything else is going to be like worked out.
Yeah.
Like if I just follow him, he will lead me in the right way and everything will work out. And so that became the foundation of our marriage and our life. I was always just the guy that, like, I was happy to be saved. I was like the woman who like came in and washed Jesus's feet, and like the Pharisees just like, what's this woman doing? And Jesus is like, man, those that realize they're guilty of a lot of sin, like they realize how much they've been forgiven.
Yeah.
It changes them. That changed me. I just wanted to be the guy in the background serving, but the Lord had other plans.
Yeah.
Like I was working, doing construction management as an engineer, but we would get plugged into churches. The Lord would always kind of put us in a role of kind of serving in ministering to people, even though that wasn't necessarily something that I really wanted to do. But the first church we went to when we moved down to California, it was like a little Baptist church, like 100 people, mainly older people.
Yeah.
But they're like, hey, you guys are the youngest people in here. You would make great youth leaders.
Right.
I was like, I've only been saved 2 years. I know nothing about that. They're like, oh, you'll learn as you go. And before you know it, we're leading a youth group.
Yeah,
And
awesome.
it was always like that. And then eventually we ended up in Astoria. I was working for the Department of Transportation, and I transferred up there. And that's where we got plugged into Coastline Christian Fellowship. And that was the first church that I'd ever gone to that taught verse by verse through the Word.
Is Coastline a Calvary Chapel?
It is.
Okay.
Yeah. And I'd never sat under like expositional teaching before. And for me, and my wife, like it was just like we started growing like never before.
Yeah.
And it really, like, I felt like the Lord brought us there just to learn to love him, love his word, to sit. I was really good at being a Martha and serving, but I didn't really know how to be a Mary and like sit and enjoy the Lord. And so there was a lot of just growth, a lot of learning. My pastor was the first pastor there, Jason Beal, that kind of saw something in me that I didn't see in myself, thought there was a calling on my life, and would kind of nudge me in the direction of giving me opportunities to teach and share devotionals. And even when I was kind of resistant, I mean, I didn't like public speaking. I didn't like being the guy up in front of everyone, but he saw a calling and kind of pushed me in that direction. And we started going there in 2007. And a couple of years after, I got asked to start a young adult group and pastor that. While I was working, I was doing that. And then eventually I got asked to be an elder. And so we just were serving there faithfully. And then in 2017, right before that, he had felt the Lord calling him on to something else.
So you were there for 10 years?
About 10 years.
Okay.
And he said, I think you're the guy that's supposed to replace me. And he had joked about that in the past, but I just had always
As the senior pastor?
Yes,
Okay.
as a senior pastor. That's what he saw for me. And so basically after about 9 months of praying and the Lord taking away every excuse for me not to, like that I had not to do it.
Yeah.
I could not do it and know that I would be being disobedient if I didn't listen to the Lord. And so I went into it just in faith and obedience. And there was a lot of tough lessons that the Lord had to teach me that I see now I couldn't have learned any other way. But learning those lessons made something that I really did not like at first, and it was just very difficult, into like the greatest privilege the Lord could have ever given me. And so I almost pastored that church I stepped down as the lead pastor at the end of July of this last year, in preparation for what we're going to share, like this next season of our life. So I was almost the lead pastor there for about 8 years.
Okay. So let me back up just a little bit here. It sounds, you said you grew up in a Christian family, and Sarah, I mean, obviously you had a very virtuous dad who would not give you the blessing unless you guys did it the right way, which I think that's a really important word for all of our younger listeners today. And because that's such a, it's such a modernized thing in the world that we live in today, where it just doesn't seem like the conviction is there as much as it should be in younger people that want to get married and are already living together. And maybe part of that is what they're being taught of the scriptures, why it's so important to teach the Bible chapter by chapter and verse by verse, so we understand and know the deep truths of God's word. So, Sarah, were you born and raised in Oregon as well?
So I was born down in Southern California.
Okay.
And then we moved to Southern Oregon.
Okay.
And then during that time, Chris and I had met. And I grew up in a Christian home with Christian parents and everything, but it was my parents' faith. It wasn't mine. And so I always grew up with the fear of mom and dad, not the fear of the Lord.
Yeah.
And I really look back and I'm like, I don't believe I was saved. Yes, I said the sinner's prayer, but there was no change inside of me whatsoever. And I kind of relate it to just like conviction. I could live a sinful life and have absolutely no conviction.
Yeah, of
so
course.
that's very interesting to me.
Yeah,
That I was more scared of mom and dad.
Yeah. The fear of the Lord, that's the beginning of all wisdom, and that's the beginning of our true walk in life.
Yeah.
I don't know if you said this or not, but were you born in Oregon?
I was born in Mountain View, California, the Bay Area.
Okay.
And we moved up to Oregon from California when I was in middle school. So like around 94-ish.
Okay.
Yeah.
Were you involved in youth group and stuff?
No. So I had no exposure to, my family was like, so the way I'd say it is my father's side of the family was Catholic, I think.
Yeah.
And they would go to church. Like I remember going to church Christmas and Easter, Mass type thing.
Yeah, there's a lot of, I'm sure we preach about this all the time. There's plenty of those kinds of Christians out there.
I would say my family was more like agnostic, like because I was raised, so my parents got divorced when I was 10 and I never saw my dad again. He just kind of bailed. And that had a hard effect on my life. I had I look back now and it was just like I had identity issues in that because I was not accepted in my mind by my father, it was very important for me to be accepted by everyone else. Yeah. So like I was constantly striving for people's approval. I had to be the best at academics. I had to be the best at sports. I had to be the most popular kid. And those are things that when you, like, there's probably people listening that like live in that fear of man, wanting to live up to people's expectations. And it's a horrible place to be because no matter how hard you try, you will not please everyone.
Yeah.
And so you're constantly, you're acting like you have it all together and like, you're popular and you're cool, but like inside you're just so fearful of what everyone think of you. Yeah. And it left me in this horrible state of depression. And part of that trying to fit in was doing drugs, was doing alcohol, was doing all the things like the cool kids that were supposedly doing to try to fit in. And none of that was making me happy, even though I was like acting like that on the outside. Right. My parents were not against God, but I just didn't have any exposure. And so I had no exposure until I started being exposed at that college ministry. And when Jesus revealed himself to me, I mean, it just clicked. It was like, I'm not finding anything I'm looking for and all these other things. But this guy, he'll accept me the way I am. I don't have to be anything. He wants me as I am. And that resonated with me. Like I found in Jesus what I didn't have in an earthly father. Yeah. And it ministered to me. Yeah. Like, and that's what drew me to him. And then all those other things that weren't working, like all of a sudden it was like, I've just needed Jesus. Yeah, like I'm finding everything, that hole in me that I've not been able to fill, it feels filled for the first time. Yeah. And it just made me want more of him. So
where were you at during all this? Were you saved yet, or was it after he got saved?
I believe I got saved after he got saved by seeing the transformation in his life.
Oh, that's powerful.
Yeah, and seeing his obedience.
Yeah.
So we joined a college ministry after he got saved, and it was called Campus Ambassadors, and they would encourage us to read our Bibles at what was called Do the 20/20 Vision, which was read your Bibles for 20 minutes and pray for 20 minutes. And seeing him do that and seeing the word have an effect on his life was very eye-opening to me. It was never really modeled before, even though I grew up in a Christian home.
Yeah. So was there this moment, or was it just kind of a process over time where you realized, my faith is obviously in the Lord and I've been born again?
it was a process over time. I really wish I had that date to say this is the day I got saved like him, but no, I have no idea when it happened. But I started noticing a sensitivity to things, like having compassion for people that I was like, gosh, I never had compassion for people before. And so I just saw the Lord slowly changing who I was.
And many people have that testimony, and it's a glorious testimony too, because you can still look back on your life and know there was a time before Christ, and then there's a time after Christ, or a time, I should say, with Christ, because we're going to be with him forever now at this point. But just that's going to be an encouraging word to a lot of people that might be in that same kind of place where you guys are at, and especially the one spouse being saved and going through a season of maybe not necessarily unequally yoked, but where you're a Christian, she's not a Christian, for however long that lasted, and many people live in that. So to hear your story of it was his obedience to God that really started to, wow, what's happening? Is this isn't the same guy I married, but it's not. I'm not losing on this for sure.
Right.
Yeah.
Exactly.
He is a changed man, and there's something contagious about that.
Right.
For all of us, when we get around Christians, we're like, oh, there's just something different. As an unbeliever, you look and it's like, there's just something different about they're so joyful and they're so nice and they're so, they're not perfect by any means, but they're different. They have this peace within them that I've tried everything to gain myself. I have similar testimony to you. I didn't get saved in a college ministry, but the acceptance thing, and a lot of that goes to I would attribute to fatherlessness and broken households, which I'm sure you've ministered to a lot of young men that are just in that same position as you.
Yeah, I think to some degree, every one of us is trying to find identity.
Absolutely.
And I love how, Romans 8:28, this thing that we remember because God promises to work all things for our good for those that love God and are called according to his purpose. I love that purpose part, because we all are looking for purpose.
Right.
It goes hand in hand with identity.
Yeah.
And your purpose is found in God. Like he has a great purpose for you. He gives you purpose. So like when you find the Lord, you find your identity, and it's a confident one. Like whereas a lot of our identity, like we kind of base it off of what others think of us, which is always kind of wishy-washy because these people are going to like you, these people aren't, and that's just a horrible place to live in. God's is secure. He says, I love you.
Yeah.
He says, I'm proud of you.
Yeah.
He says, like, I'm pleased with you. And it's all received through faith in Jesus. It's not something you're earning or you have to wonder. So like the only stability you can find in identity is in Jesus. And when I found that, like, I was just like, this is what I want. This
Absolutely.
is what, like, the more I learned about him, the more I learned about how he felt about me, like the more I was just like, this, like, he's the perfect father. It's like, this is who we need.
Yeah, I do a lot of jail ministry. I go into a few different jails around here, and that's the message that I take is that God is the perfect father. And you know how it is. People, when they hear the word father, automatically they're attributing that word to their earthly father. And as we all know as Christians, that God works on us our whole life here, teaching us and showing us how he is the perfect father, and kind of changing our mindset away of some of us have had very good earthly fathers and some of us haven't. But even the most perfect or best earthly father is still a sinner and fallen short of the glory of God. And so trying to learn and understand that you have a father in heaven who is teaching you and showing you what a true father, this is the father, he is the father, and he has shown you that love, is a lifetime experience that, for all of us, I just feel like we're just like scratching the surface of it.
Oh, absolutely.
This life,
You're still learning the benefits of that. Like I remember stepping in as a pastor and I still learning that I had acceptance issues or identity issues because what was making it so hard was this wanting everyone like to like me and like, so when people would compare me to the last pastor
as a pastor, that's
it was like really devastating to me.
That's difficult.
But I felt like there were times where the Lord was like teaching me these theological truths that we would all say we believe because they're biblical. Like, well, are you up here for my glory or your glory? And it's like, well, I'm up here for your glory, Lord. then why do you care what people think of you? Because it only matters what they think of me. Yeah. And so there were these deep truths that he was, because I'm like, you're right. I shouldn't really care what they think about me. As long as I'm rightly dividing the word and I'm accurately representing you, then I'm doing what you tell me to do. And that's all that matters. You're being glorified. And so in learning those truths helped make me even more secure in my identity with the Lord. And then they turned this into fun because there was all this extra weight I was putting on myself that God's like, I'm not asking you to put that weight on yourself.
You don't need to carry that.
It's like, just be faithful and like, know that I'm pleased with you. You're being faithful and good. And that's all I ask. Yeah. And I'm happy with you. And it was so freeing to learn those things, you know, even though it was a hard process, like these difficult things that the Lord was teaching me, but it transpired to all parts of my life because when you learn that, okay, well, you know, I obviously don't want people not to like me. I don't want to give them a reason. I don't want to be like a jerk, but like sometimes you just can't help it. Because we're finicky as people and we like people and we don't like people and we're disappointed. But all of that is, you know, as long as I'm right with the Lord, I can't control any of that. And I can know how I am with the Lord. Yeah. And that is so freeing just to live for him and live for his acceptance, which you can be sure of, and not try to gain that through other people that you never are going to be able to do.
Now, is Coastline Calvary, is it a bigger church? Considerably, you know, let's just say more than 200 people?
I say that like it's big for the area.
Yeah.
We're in the north coast of Oregon, so right about 8 miles outside of Astoria, so Clatsop County area. So yeah, it's a church of, we probably have on average about 250-ish to 300 adults, and then probably another like 100. It's a very kid-friendly, like family, so a lot of 100 kids. So for that area, it's a bigger church.
Well, I just,
it's not like a mega church.
Yeah, but I asked that because you know, going into pastoral ministry and carrying that sort of burden of trying to please everybody. You know, one of the things I'm learning as a young pastor myself is, when it comes to relationships among people in the congregation, you have to get through the challenges of how you have relationships with everybody, and it's difficult because you go through jealousies and you go through letting down people's expectations. Expectations is always a big one, and which is unfortunate. But I think it's just one of the realities of ministry.
And the bigger the church, the harder that is, because honestly, where we're going to be going, it's a lot smaller. And I actually look forward to that, which, I mean, might sound kind of weird to some pastors, like, oh, I wish I had a big church. But the reality is, like, I very much like the pastoring into things, where I like the one-on-one
the actual shepherding.
I like hanging out with people and doing life with them.
Which is hard with 250 people and one or two of you, you know?
And I'm juggling. I want to be a faithful dad. I've got 4 boys. I want to be a faithful husband. I got a wife. So we all know how busy life is in general. And then you're trying to do life with these other people as faithfully as you can. And there's different degrees of need. Some people really need you. They're going through hard things. They need counseling. They need somebody just to be there to support them. And then you have other people that just are looking to be discipled. They've got questions. They've got answered. All these different levels of maturity in their walk with the Lord. And you're wanting to be there, but you can't. And so there's this fine line of making sure you're never trying to be Jesus to people. You're trying to, like, because Jesus can be there for everyone, and he's never going to not be there and be
He's got that gift of omnipresence.
Yes, exactly. I don't have that. So I'm trying to make sure, you know, like, to ultimately point them to him. But you're trying to do the best you can and figure out how to do that. But it is a challenging thing. And if you ever figure it out, let me know, because I'm like,
I won't.
I'm like, I admit it's something that I'm constantly, Lord, help me know how to do this.
I blow people's expectations and, you know, let people down. And one of the things that I think, you know, building a good team as a pastor is obviously super important. But just the idea of trying your best to minister to each situation and each relationship, as it's weird because, and I'm sure you can attest to this, but ministry can be lonely. Like even though you're surrounded by lots of people, there's still a loneliness that that comes because not everybody understands the life of a pastor and those expectations that are put on a pastor and the normal people in the congregation. They're seeing, from their perspective of it's just them and you as the pastor and not seeing that it's you and 250 other people.
Yes.
And it can breed loneliness for sure.
Yeah.
Which is always something we have to guard against.
Yeah.
But I want to, so this is the great thing about podcasts is you can just talk about whatever you want and people love it.
Yeah,
People just love conversations. One of the things that helped me understand my relationship with God being a father was having children of my own and knowing that, and you talk about this acceptance in this, how he looks at us and how much I look at my children and they're just totally and unconditionally loved by me and even though they do things wrong and I do get frustrated and those things, I still love them as an imperfect person. How much more is the love of God towards us? He is as a perfect father. So you have 4 boys.
Yes.
That sounds fun.
Yes. There's a lot of testosterone in our house.
Yeah, a lot of anything. I've learned this. So we have a 5-year-old daughter and we have a 1-year-old son. And going through the different season of like raising your daughter through the 1 and 2-year-old age is like, and even the 3-year-old, she brings you flowers and draws you beautiful pictures and loves pink things. And then boy is like drunken Viking running through the house, destroying everything.
Yes.
It's such a different dynamic, but it's so fun. So did you have these boys when you started ministry, or is this something, let me ask this. How long were you married before you started ministry?
So we were married a couple years before I would say that we got asked to serve in our first official position as youth leaders. That story I had. So we had been married a couple years. We did not have kids at that point.
Okay.
We had kids when we were
married for 5 years.
Married for 5 years. So we had been involved in 2 churches at that point in serving in both of them when we had our first
But
kid.
doing things like helping in Awanas.
Oh, yeah.
Yes.
Stuff like that.
Yeah, of course. That's kind of the ministry introduction. Here you go. Here's Awana. Here's children's ministry.
Yes.
Here's youth ministry. And if you can learn how to teach these kids, you can certainly teach adults.
Yes. Right. Yes. Well, and I say that to especially young guys that are wanting to teach and maybe have a wrong attitude of well, I'm not really called to teach kids. And I'm like, you got to be able to teach kids. And
absolutely.
I'm like, you learn that, you'll be able to teach adults because keeping their attention is way harder. So.
Yeah, and that's always a good test of the heart too. Why do you what is your reason? What are your motivations? Why do you want to do this? So let's bring your children into this before we start talking about London.
Yeah.
What was that like?
Well, so we have 4 boys. Our oldest, he's actually over in England right now, serving as a ministry assistant.
How old is he?
He is 20.
Okay.
Samuel. And then our second oldest, Benjamin, is turning 18 this year in December.
How old were you both when you had your first?
26 and 27.
Really?
Yeah.
Oh, all right.
We're how old do you think we are?
Anyways.
The ministry is treating you well.
If I grew my beard fully out, you'd see how white it is.
Right. Yeah, I've got those coming right here. That's wisdom.
It's funny because we were talking to somebody about England, and they're like, "Oh, it's so good to see younger people going over there to bring new life." And then I told them how old we are, and they're like, "Oh, you're not young." And I was just like. I'm glad I look young.
Yeah. So. I'll take that as a compliment. I'll take that.
Yeah. So we had Benjamin is turning 18. Solomon.
So 2 years apart there between your first two. Okay.
They're all 2 except the surprise. So then Solomon, he's turning 16. And then we thought we were done. And then we had Zeke 10 years later. So he's 6.
Awesome.
6, Ezekiel. And so, but I would say that you're way more laid back. We're way more laid back with Zeke because we've just learned all the things that you're so worried of the first time around, and they end up all right.
Yeah.
So we're enjoying him a lot more than we did the others because we were so stressed when they were being raised.
Well, you see how fast time goes.
Yeah, and you see how quickly they become teenagers, and then they just don't want anything to do with mom and dad, and so it's like
no more sitting on your lap and holding in those precious moments,
and
right?
so we're enjoying that,
of course.
that stage
again. What a gift from God that must be.
Yes.
Right.
Yeah.
And we are very lucky. And as a family, right from the beginning, we had a lot of unity and like believing that, and this is something I've always kind of taught guys that I was like, as a pastor or whatnot, guys that were in leadership. It's like, bring your family with you. Like, don't leave them behind. Like, Jesus isn't asking you to leave them behind in serving him. And so we would try to the greatest extent possible. Like, we couldn't involve them in everything, but in the things we could, we would do ministry as a family. So when we served in kids ministry, the boys would serve with us, even though they were younger. When we started that young adult group, the boys were a part of that.
Yeah.
They were, and that was a blessing because they were being raised by these young adults alongside that they thought were cool and played an impact or had an impact on their lives as they grew up following Jesus.
And I've heard the other side of that testimony too, from people that are actually in young adults in that group. They're watching you as a parent raise your kids, and that's ministering to them.
Yes,
I've heard that testimony over and over and over again, and it encourages me when we're trying to do the shuffle of ministry and kids and trying to stay focused on everything and having our kids with us in ministry. Even high school age, high school girls and young adult girls, they're seeing how my wife is mothering children, and it's kind of like the silent ministry that's happening, the silent words that are spoken by seeing that.
And especially since so many people today are coming out of bad home lives or broken homes, when they're a part of a home that isn't where nobody's claiming to be perfect, but we love the Lord and we want to follow the Lord and we're devoted to each other and we're devoted to the Lord. That resonates. Yeah. Like that's what they want when they grow up. And that's what we would always hear the young adults, that we let them come into our home and be a part of our family is what ministered to them. Yeah. That was what was attractive to them.
So what did you guys do for education?
You can explain this.
Yeah, so I homeschooled our boys until they got into high school. And then when they got into high school, I put them in Calvary Prep Academy, which is through Calvary Chapel, but it's an online school.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So how was the homeschooling process?
Something I did not want to do.
Yeah.
I was so against homeschooling because I didn't want to produce awkward children.
Yeah, exactly.
And so I was very against it. But the Lord made it clear year after year that I was supposed to homeschool the kids. And I would just kind of search the scriptures every year and say, Lord, what do you want us to do? Am I supposed to homeschool them? And he always gave me Romans 16:19, which was that we would be wise to what is good and innocent to what is evil. And I really had to reflect on that like year after year and think, well, how do I keep my kids from evil if they're in something for 8 hours a day, And I understand it's not all evil. That's not what I'm saying.
No.
But honestly, I think the Lord really used homeschooling more for myself because I really grew in the Lord with the curriculum that I used. And then it was really good because I would have probably conversations with my boys I never would have had they been gone 8 hours a day.
Well, and that critique that you wrestled with of not wanting awkward children. I graduated, so I'm a little younger than you guys. I graduated in 2005, and I grew up in a really small town in Nevada, and there really wasn't a lot of homeschoolers. But me and my wife have this complete opposite background where she was homeschooled, totally raised up at home, and then she went to Calvary Chapel Bible College after homeschool. And there is that, or I should say was more or less that mindset of like, well, your kids they're going to be socially awkward. They're not going to know how to, be around people and this and that, which obviously we're seeing. Well, no, because that's what the church is for. And this is what all of the people, but homeschool is becoming more and more prominent where, I think most of the kids in our youth group are all homeschooled now at this point, which I think is a good thing. Whatever route I think parents take, as long as they are raising their kids in the fear and admonition of the Lord and doing what Romans 16:19 in protecting their minds while they're young from the things and preparing them for life and being obedient to God. Because it's not just you're not just sending them in when you do public schooling. You're not just sending them into an indoctrination center where the teachers are the only thing you have to worry about, but there are around 40, 50 other students too. And it's like you have an individual relationship with all those kids. And so that brings on challenges, but that's really awesome to hear that you were able to homeschool all of them.
Yeah. And I would say like our goal in that was not to like completely shelter them
For sure.
from the world, because they still had exposure.
Yeah,
Like they,
no matter
what, they were all active boys. They all did sports year round. So they were around, like other kids and stuff. And because of that, I would say that they weren't awkward. They had social interaction between church, youth group, all the different sports.
So what would you say to parents that are going through that fear? Maybe they have 2 teenage or close to teenage age children that they're just, what the word is helicoptery, I guess. They're trying to just keep them barred from every single thing so they don't get it. So how do you minister to people like that?
I would say, like my opinion, maybe you have something different, but just so my goal, one of our goals in homeschooling was we, as parents, it's our job to lay that foundation, like that basically they're going to see the world through the eyes of God. That's what I want. I want to see them like a biblical understanding of everything, so that as a parent and I allow them exposure to the world in increments where they're going to have to reason with things. Well, this is right and this isn't right, and this is wrong. What I'm being told here is not what God says. That I'm there to assist them in that as they, digest these things and start to learn what they believe and what's truth and what's not truth. And I would say, like, that's an awesome process to be a part of, and it just happens kind of naturally. When your boys come home from practice, like, well, this kid was saying this, but I was like, yeah, this isn't what God says.
Right.
They're having these interactions, and you're there to just not really like have to like coach them, but just say, you were right. That was the right way to handle that, and that was a good response. And just kind of affirm them already thinking the right things or being in the right direction. And I think that for us, the homeschooling really allowed us to lay that foundation in a way that the boys were able to, kind of go out into the world gradually and be exposed to things and be able to rightly divide truth from falseness and stuff.
Yeah.
Yeah, it all starts, I agree, like what you're saying, it all starts in the home, and we have to live what we believe. We can't just talk about it. We have to live it. And for me, I would say I was never really a helicopter mom. I really want my boys to come into hard things and then have to process those and deal with them and not shelter them. But my big thing was always establishing trust.
Yeah.
Trust was really, really big. And I told my boys, you guys can have all the privileges that you want as long as I can trust you. But as soon as you lose that trust, it's like you're on a spool of rope, and it's like, I'll give you as much as you need. But as soon as you lose that trust, I'm going to roll you back in and you're going to be, treated like a toddler again. And so I think it really helped me not being a helicopter mom because we really established trust early on. Yeah,
no, that's good, and for sure, that's a word to some of our listeners who are going. I mean, even me as I have young children, and I'm looking dreadfully at the days when I have a teenage daughter and a teenage son, and especially in our over sexualized culture and those things, and just from the wisdom I've gained from many parents who have gone before me, it's the one day at a time, one battle at a time, one conversation at a time, one discipleship moment at a time, one teaching moment, whatever it is. But that trust thing that you hit on is so good, because I think that we have all seen children that do come out of a household they were protected their whole life. And maybe they were exposed to some things in the world that they weren't taught about. And it might even fracture their trust in their parents a little bit when they went out, because, well, mom and dad didn't tell, they didn't tell me about this. They didn't, there was no being raised up in this, and then trying to heal that back up. Yeah. So it's awesome. So you guys you're living together. You fall under conviction. You stop living together to get married. You end up in ministry in 2007 and start having children. You are just faithful over a decade, and over that decade, God elevates you to this position of senior pastor of the church, which is obviously a very high calling for anybody that has done ministry, understands and knows that. So now everything's good, right? God, He has you where you've arrived. You are where you're supposed to be.
I
finally.
Literally remember right before the Lord asked me to be senior pastor, just like thinking, Because at some point we always had a heart for missions.
Yeah.
And I was really kind of the one that led a lot of our mission trips at our church and stuff. It was another thing I did. And at some point we thought we were going to be called into serving in missions with some friends of ours down in Colombia, because we had gone there multiple times, and that never worked out. So like I kind of got to this place right before I was asked to be senior pastor of like, you know what, Lord, we're content.
Yeah,
like,
of course.
Like we're, I have a good job here that allows me to serve you. We love being like the young adult leaders. Like this is fruitful. I love being an elder here. We'll just do this forever. Like this is just our home. You've made that clear. We're not supposed to go anywhere else. And then as soon as I got to that point, then I got asked to be the pastor. And I really thought like, okay, well, this isn't what I wanted or I saw for myself, but you must know better, Lord, and you must just have us here forever. Right. Like this is why you wanted us to be content.
It seems pretty, solid to me. Just hearing the testimony. It's like, wow, okay, so you're thinking these thoughts.
This is where our roots are planted, and we're going to be here forever. And so that was the mentality that I stepped into that pastor role. And the first 2 years of that were, I would say, hard because I was transitioning for a pastor that was the founding pastor that had been there for 17 years. And there's just a lot, anyone's gone through a transition.
I'm sure people left, right?
Yes,
it always happens.
Oh, yeah.
People leave.
Yeah, we lost a chunk of the church, and it was really
Which can
hard.
Be extremely discouraging.
I would say the hardest thing is a lot of those people were good friends of ours, so that was really hard. A lot of lessons
you can't
learned.
not take. It's almost impossible to not take that personal.
Yeah,
right? It seems like you're okay. You're leaving because now I'm the pastor.
And here's what I've learned: like people view that differently. So like, whereas to us, like some of these people were like, we very much looked at them as family. And like in your mind, like you would never leave your kids. You never leave your wife. You don't leave your family. That's the way we viewed it. Yeah. And to them, they honestly didn't see it that way because you'd run into them at Costco and they just like say, hey, how's it going? Like everything's fine. And like they never said goodbye or whatever. And so it was just this, it gave me empathy because I'm like, they really don't see the same way I did.
Yeah.
But it was another thing where the Lord had to teach us to just like, all right, just, rely on me to heal you and comfort you. And so the Lord did that. And then after those 2 years, COVID happened, and that was a whole nother degree of difficulty. It was different
for everybody.
Difficulty in a different way.
Yeah.
And so those first 4 years were really, really hard. And then we came into the season of kind of fruitfulness, like where just from enduring, like the Bible shows, just like being faithful, steadfast, enduring through the hard stuff, and God doesn't waste it. Right. He does work in you. He does work through you. And we started seeing the fruit, which takes time to grow, start growing. And we entered into this really fruitful season of the church the second half of the time we were there. Now, while this is all happening, in 2019, I was coming back from a mission trip, visiting some missionaries in France. And we were flying through Heathrow Airport. I was with a youth pastor of our church, and we were on that trip together. So we're in Heathrow, and I have a prayer journal that I pray through, like parts of it every day. I go through the whole thing through a week. And I just had this strong burden to pray for revival in London. My only connection to London at this point was she had some extended family there. I had visited her once before. No ministry connections whatsoever. It was super weird. It was like, I don't even know why, but I have a burden to pray for revival in London. And so much so I wrote this in my prayer journal and dated it like in 2019. I think it was March 2019. It's in there. And I heard a pastor say years later that a calling usually starts with a burden. And I would say, even though I didn't know anything at this time, that's where the burden, the call started at that point. So I just continued to pray, not knowing why, every week as I went through my prayer journal. So fast forward a couple of years around COVID and...
Yeah, so I think it was in 2022.
Yeah.
My mom had done Ancestry DNA, and through Ancestry, she realized that her father was not her biological dad. So my grandma was born in England, and my mom was born in England. And she was always told that this American soldier who was in the Air Force was her dad. And he was stationed over there, met my grandma, and then they moved back to the States and had her. But that wasn't true. My grandma actually had gotten pregnant by a British man.
Wow.
So when Ancestry showed us all this, we found out also that my mom has a couple sisters who live over in England. And that's when my heart started to stir. And I was like, wow, I have these aunts over in England who I don't know. Do they know Jesus?
Yeah.
That was the only thing I can think of. And so I did this Google search and I was like, can I get my citizenship? And I filled out the survey. And after filling out the survey, they're like, you qualify for British citizenship.
That's awesome.
An immigration attorney is going to call you.
That's amazing.
And so $500 later, and because of COVID, things were backed up. So it wasn't until January of 23 that I had received my British citizenship.
Yeah.
And so we had no intent with that citizenship other than we thought it was cool. Like in my mind, I was like, this was after COVID. Travel was really difficult. We had friends and missionaries to visit in Europe. At the time, I think the UK was still part of the European Union. So in my mind, I was like, $500, it's a no-brainer. It's not going to affect your U.S. citizenship. It'll make traveling easier. Just get it. So she gets it. It gets solidified in January of 2023. She had to swear allegiance to the king and everything.
Now, at this point, you still hadn't been connected with the church over there?
No.
None of that?
No.
We know nothing.
No,
Okay.
we know nothing about any, like this is a fruitful season at Coastline at this point. Like we're just like content, like happy, like things are thriving. And so things started moving really fast at this point. So she gets her citizenship in January of 2023. In February of 2023, a pastor friend of mine and his wife are at our annual marriage retreat. They're teaching, and they have a lot of people that came out of their church that planted a bunch of Calvary chapels over in Europe. And so they've been over to Europe, and they love Europe, and we're talking about Europe, and we mentioned this about her citizenship, and they were the first ones that kind of were like, that's a huge deal. Like, a lot of people, missionaries, end up having to come home because they can't get their citizenship. What do you think the Lord's going to do with that? And we were just like, nothing. Like, I mean, we don't have any, like, I don't want to leave Coastline. Like, this is our home. Like, we don't have any plans to leave. And this pastor's wife was like, there is this guy that I know over there that's been over there for lots of years. And he's been praying for the last couple of years for the Lord to raise somebody up to replace him. You should reach out to him. And at first you hear that and that's intriguing, but at the same time, I'm like, no way. I'm like, I'm not looking to leave.
Yeah, it's kind of like, but why? Why do that? You know, why go through all that?
I'm like, if the Lord wants me to do something this drastic, he's going to have to make it really clear. I'm not going to try to manipulate this and make this happen. So that's in February of 2023. March of 2023, we had already had a trip planned to go to Slovenia, which is kind of Central Europe by Germany, Austria area, and visit some missionary friends of ours. And so we go on that trip, and on the way back, since we're so close to the UK, we decide to spend a week there to see her family, to visit a Bible college for our son, like potential for him to go to, and just take some downtime. And so we did what we always do every time we're on a trip, and we have a free Sunday, is we just look for the nearest Calvary Chapel church to go to. And we're looking, like we were staying in Windsor that Sunday, and we look in the Calvary Chapel. The nearest one to us was that one that she had mentioned. Calvary Chapel Twickenham was the name. And we looked at each other. I'm just like, that's super weird.
Yeah.
I'm like, of all the Calvary Chapels, because there are more than a few in England, I'm like, this is the one that like would be closest to us. And so I'm like, all right, well, I'm going to reach out to the pastor that had mentioned it to us and try to get this pastor's contact and figure out how to get there, because we didn't have a car. We were going to have to take public transportation. So I reach out. He actually gets back to me, gives me these super convoluted instructions, like you got to take a bus, you got to take a train. And we're on vacation, mind you. So I'm just like, I don't know if I really want to do all this to go to church.
Public transit is not that easy if you've never done it before.
Yeah, and I'm just like, we'll just go across the street. The Windsor Castle's across the street. They have St. Paul's Cathedral. We'll just go to like one of their
just walk over
ceremonies on Sunday. I'm like, it'll be cool, you know? So I'm like, let's just pray about it. We'll wake up in the morning and we'll decide what we're going to do. So I get up in the morning, I'm in the shower, and I'm thinking, man, I just want to walk across the street. I don't want to go through planes, trains, and automobiles to get to church. So I'm kind of in my mind set, like, yeah, we're not going to go. I get out, and there's a text from the pastor of this church. His name's Rob Dingman. And he's like, I am so looking forward to meeting you guys today. Can we take you out to lunch? We'd love to hang out with you. And I'm thinking oh man, I can't disappoint this guy. Yeah. I'm like, maybe the dude needs to be encouraged or something. Yeah. So I'm like, Sarah, get up. Like, we're going to have to go. And so we got an Uber, went to church, and it was a sweet little fellowship, 40, 50 people, and hung out with them for church, and then hung out with the family after, spent the day with them. Like, they took us out to lunch, then they wanted to go to coffee, then they took us to sightseeing and drove us home, and it was cool. And we left, we just exchanged emails, and I thought that was it. I thought, like, okay, well, cool, I have a connection over here now. Maybe that turns into something later. So 2 days later, we're on our trip. We were up in York. We're checking out a Bible college for our son. And I get this long email from Pastor Rob, pastor of that church. And he's explaining to me how in 2018, he was asked to go to Calvary Chapel Siegen, which is a Calvary Chapel that's been there from the very beginning. It's like the mothership of all Calvary Chapels over in Europe. And he actually helped plant it way back in the day. But he got asked to go back there and start a ministry of discipling young guys and sending them out as pastors. And where he's at in his ministry, he's like, this just is where my heart is. This is like, but he's like, I had a list of things that need to happen for me to leave this church. I'm not just going to leave it. And he's like, all those things have happened except the Lord raising up the right guy to replace me. And he's like, I know I just met you, but I think you're the guy. And I'm just
nice to meet you too.
Yeah, exactly. And my first reaction is like, what? I mean, it was like 0 to 100 in a second. I'm like, you don't even know me. So anyways, like, I asked him, I said, well, okay, we're going to be back in London the night before we leave. Can we get together? Because I have a million questions. And so we met up for coffee one last time. And my main question was like, I'm not just the first warm body that came here, right? Yeah. Because I'm not interested in leaving. Like, I am happy where I'm at. And, and he's like, no, he's like, there's been like 6 other guys that wanted this position. And, for some reason or another, they just were not a good fit. It didn't work out. And I really think you're the guy. And so, for me, I was like, okay, well, and he said, let's just pray about it. We'll stay in touch. We'll keep praying. All right. So, I prayed about it for a year before I heard from the Lord. Yeah. But she heard something sooner than that. So I'll let you.
Yeah. Right after we came home from that trip, I called my immigration attorney and I just said, hey, my husband was offered a job. What would this look like, with my kids? Could they come over? And at the time, our oldest son was 17, about to turn 18 within a few months. And he said, oh, because he's going to turn 18 soon, he's like, you guys need to file for your family visa immediately. Oh. And I knew we couldn't file for our visas immediately because we hadn't heard from the Lord if this was of him. So I was pretty devastated and I just cried out to the Lord. I said, Lord, I need to know if we're going to London or not, and I'm like.
And did you want to go?
Yeah, I love change. I'm all for a new adventure and everything, but things were finally so good at Coastline. I was finally at a place where I was content.
What I think is interesting about your part of the whole story is just the heritage part, this heritage that you had going back. And heritage is not a bad thing. It kind of has been muddled up in our society today as like all has to be erased, especially for us. But just that God was using that as stirring your heart too. I think if we're all honest, we kind of have that within us. The gospel now, obviously the gospel is, we have a big heritage in the gospel, right? For centuries of people from every tongue, language, race, all of that stuff. But I think that's a really unique and awesome thing that God can use to stir our hearts, and it's not a bad thing.
Yeah.
No.
So that's cool.
Yeah. So I was just crying out to the Lord because I was like, Lord, you just need to show me if I'm supposed to, if we're supposed to go to England or not. And I read through the Bible every year. And so I was like, hey, I'm going to open up the word where I'm at. I hope you speak to me. So it said that I was going to be in Judges 4, 5, and 6 that morning. So I read Judges 4, which is Deborah. And I'm like, yeah, this isn't speaking to me, Lord. This isn't telling me nothing. And then I went to the next section and it was jail and the tent peg. And, I was like, oh yeah, this isn't still no good.
Yeah, how does this apply right now?
Yeah, and then I got to Judges 6 and it was Gideon. And what really spoke to me was when he said, the angel of the Lord said, go in this might of yours.
Yeah, that's a powerful word.
And my heart was pounding and I'm like, man, Lord, I really believe that's you telling us to go. And so I pulled up a commentary and I wanted just to kind of read that section, see what it said. And it was David Gusick's commentary. And the very first thing, he broke it down into a lot of different points, but the very first thing was Gideon could go in this might because he was humble. And when we sat down with Rob Dingman in London, right before we flew home, the very first thing he said to Chris was, he's like, you're the right guy because you're humble. And then there was this long laundry list of different things why Gideon could go that was so in line with our heart and how we felt about England. And so it was really a special time for me just to be like, this is the Lord, you know? But his story is different. It took him a year before he heard from the Lord.
I'm not so emotional. Like I'm more like, all right, Lord, you're going to have to really like make it clear. So, and if I'm being honest, like I knew something was different when Rob asked me, like it felt like a call. It really did, to the degree where I shared it with the elders right away. And I said, man, if this is even something that remotely could happen, we need to be praying together because we need to be in unity that the Lord's calling me out because I had no intentions of leaving and who that is that he's calling in, you know, like, cause there has to be a replacement for me to leave.
Yeah, that's a whole nother aspect to it. You have a whole flock of people that you don't want to just uproot.
I love,
because you already know what happens when someone healthily leaves. Or you know, so it's not that you would be unhealthily leaving, but just a kind of abruptly leaving. You know?
Because
there's some timestamps here. There's some time frames you have to get things done by.
Yes, exactly. And so, so we proceeded. I would meet with Rob online. We'd pray, and obviously we were praying, but it wasn't. And during that year, he invited us to come in. We like basically not be there on vacation. Like we lived in their house while they were gone for a couple of weeks, and I filled in for him at the church, just get a feel for what life was. And I would say like, it wasn't like, it was confirming in that like the Lord just showed me like, yeah, you're just going to do the same thing you do at home. You're going to teach the word, you're going to preach the gospel, and I'm going to move. And like, so it was affirming to me in that way, like, oh, I could do ministry over here. I would just do the same thing. But it wasn't like there was any like clear, thus says the Lord. And so about a year after this, in March of 2024, I'm at a statewide men's conference that they do in Oregon every year. And my pastor that had, you know, basically handed the church to me, he was speaking that year at that. And he's teaching this great teaching on the paralytic that got healed at Bethesda. And it's a 2-part message. And the first part, like, he's doing this great response time, and I'm just sitting there thinking like, man, I wish I had something to respond. Like, this is great. I don't know if this is really for me. And like, so I'm like, I'm just here to pray for these other dudes. So I'm like praying for people. And then the second part, it was like the Lord just had to hit me upside the head. And like, he's just like, this is for you. Like, get up, pick up your mat and walk. Like, start moving forward in this call. And it was so like clear. Like, I just remember texting Sarah, I'm like, I just got the go ahead. Like, we need to start moving forward. And so for us, that was kind of like when the priests stepped out in the Jordan, when God told them to go in the promised land and the water just stopped. This was the kind of stepping out in the Jordan, because as we started going forward, all of a sudden the doors just started opening. And so,
they don't open until you take that step.
Yes, exactly. Right. Exactly. And like we started seeing like right away just mountains come up and then mountains being moved. And so one of the first things we had to do was we set up an appointment with her immigration attorney that got her citizenship to figure out, okay, what does this look like? And he was like, oh yeah, you're going to go over on a spousal visa. Your kids are going to go over dependent visas. You're basically going to be immigrating. It's a formality. But as immigrants, they make it really expensive.
I'm sure.
And so they're like, for a family your size, you're going to need $112,000 in a bank account for at least 6 months.
Wow.
And you're going to have about $30,000 in visa costs. And so we don't have anywhere near that kind of money.
No,
like it was just
not
like
just sitting around in a bank account somewhere. Yeah, that's usually not the pastoral life.
No, exactly. So it was like, okay, and for me, it was just kind of like, all right, Lord, it's like, here's the first 2 mountains, if you want us to do this, you could do it, you're going to have to. And so
we just so happened to be fasting and praying that week that we had that meeting with the immigration attorney. So we got off the phone with him and we were just like, okay, now what, because
well,
this is
I'm
huge.
sure that this mountain that you're looking at this point in your life comes at a time in your life where it seems that as God's moving us in faith, it's always he's wanting us to use faith for the next thing, because this little thing, for instance, what used to be such a big deal would be like, oh man, I need to get tires on the car, or I need to get a battery for the car, or the alternator went out. And that required a lot of faith of trusting God that he was going to provide. So like these little things in your life, and I'm sure you have testimony after testimony of God providing in your life, and all these little things up to this point.
Oh, absolutely.
Yeah, absolutely.
I make the joke, every time the Lord has done a big transition in my life, like where he's clearly asked me to switch jobs.
Yeah.
It's always been a demotion in the world's eyes. It's been a big pay cut.
Yeah.
But we've never gone without.
Yeah. Amen.
The Lord has always, like, I've even kind of had that probably a wrong mentality of like, oh, it's all right, Lord, I'll sacrifice for you. And the Lord's like, I'm not going to be your debtor. Like, it's like, I'm just asking you to be obedient. It's like, I'm still going to take care of you.
Yeah, that's such a good word.
And we've never not been taken care of.
Yeah.
And sometimes it's come in miraculous ways, which I often would say, well, I could have the cushy job with a high salary, or I could watch God miraculously provide.
Yeah.
I've come to learn I'd rather watch the miraculous, because that's what builds your faith.
Well, and particularly when homeschooling, so you were the only income of the house.
Yes.
And I try to always jump on a testimony like this to encourage Christian parents with their kids that you can do it. If you're stepping out in faith to raise your children in the fear and the knowledge of the Lord, he will provide. And
we felt very
I'm sure there was
strongly-
temptation there at times, but
and we felt very strongly, I mean, from the very beginning, that when we had kids, I know my wife had a very strong desire to be home and present as their mom.
and that's a beautiful. See, that's like, there is no better calling than that.
Yeah.
The culture lies and tries to make it seem like that is a downgrade for women, but that is the greatest calling for women.
Oh, absolutely. And I would agree. And I wanted to honor that. Like,
Yeah,
and
absolutely.
so before we had kids, my wife had a part-time job, but we would keep that money separate so we didn't have to live off of it.
Yeah.
So that,
You're
because we
preparing
knew
yourself for
we
this.
were
Yes.
preparing ourselves always for that when we did have kids, we could live off of my income alone.
Yeah.
And like you said, the Lord is always faithful. He's always been faithful to honor that. And I know that's not for everyone, but that was for us. And what you're saying is a good word. If that's what the Lord's telling you to do, you should do it, because the Lord will take care of you.
So now you're looking at this mountain of $150,000,
Yeah.
give or take.
Yeah.
Is God going to be faithful with that?
Yes.
Yes. So
Yes.
like I said,
Hallelujah.
we happened to be praying and fasting that week. And so we, ended the phone conversation. We were kind of stumped, like, okay, now what? And then the next morning I woke up and I started thinking, when you worked for the state of Oregon, you had a PERS account, which is retirement. And I said, I wonder, do you think your retirement account would count as a savings account? And he's like, that's interesting. He said, because you know what? When I became a pastor, I never gave the PERS account, the retirement account, my forwarding address, because we had moved. And he's like, I don't even know like how much money is in that account.
So he's
like,
got this account sitting out there, this retirement
We
account,
have-
not
yeah.
even a thought before.
Not,
Yes.
Nope.
Yeah.
Totally
Yeah.
forgot about this money. And he's like, so why don't you call the immigration attorney and ask him if it can count as a savings account? And I'll contact the PERS account and see how much money we even have in that account. So I contacted our immigration attorney, and sure enough, he was like, yeah, he said, you can use a retirement account as a savings account as long as it's liquid. So you have to be able to withdraw money from it. And if you know anything about like state retirement, it's normally not liquid at all. You can't touch it until you're of age.
It's like Social Security.
Yeah,
They
you
pay
can't have
you
it.
a monthly check.
Yeah.
Well, and
Like-
usually if you can touch it, you definitely can't touch all of it.
Yes.
Exactly.
Yes.
So
Yes.
this is kind of a, like, it's probably not going to work. But so he looks into his PERS account and come find out he has enough money in there to cover that $112,000 that we needed. but was it liquid? So he was talking to the agent on the phone, and she's looking at his history, and she goes, "Oh, interesting. In 2003, the legislator made a change that you could do a one-time withdrawal."
Wow.
From,
That's phenomenal.
And here's the thing.
Talk about the providence of God.
Yes.
In the past,
and
right?
Then,
but in the future.
Exactly.
And then she's like, and you were hired right after that law went into effect.
In 2004.
So she's like, yes, if you chose to do a one-time withdrawal, you could do that and forego your PERS rights. And so basically it made it liquid.
It made it liquid.
So you got it.
Yeah.
You were able to get it.
So like in one day, that mountain was like moved.
Wow.
Like the biggest mountain where I thought, oh yeah, the Lord's going to have to do something great. It was like just like that.
Yeah.
And from our perspective, we looked back and I'm like what you just said, man, the Lord was like preparing us for this.
It's just more like certainty.
Yes.
More confirmation.
Yes.
This is, okay, God, you really are in this.
Yes.
And you've been in this since before you even called me into ministry.
And then within a week after that, so at this point, the only people that know about this are the elders. They're praying along with us. And some pastor friends of mine that were removed from the church because I didn't want anything to get out unless I knew for certainty I was going.
Yeah. Yeah, because that would just be a lot to deal with.
Yes. And so one of those pastor friends of mine, so I sent we had signed on with a mission organization to kind of handle our financials and stuff if people wanted to donate. And one of the requirements was to send out a quarterly newsletter. So we sent out our first quarterly newsletter around that same week, which was to only 18 people. And one of those people was a pastor friend of ours. And he was so excited. Like he read it and he sent me a text. He's like, hey, we're super excited what the Lord's doing. We're going to send you $5,000 towards those visa costs.
Awesome.
So this is like in a week, like basically he's moved the first mountain. Here's a big chunk he just took out of that mountain.
Right.
And at that point, I just was like remembering what I had told so many missionaries before that like the fundraising can always be so stressful. And I've always tried to encourage them. Hey, the Lord doesn't start things he doesn't finish.
It's easy. It's easy to say that, but then when you're living in it, it's like, man, God, to see how He comes through.
Yes.
You know, early on in life, it might be, man, Lord, I really hope you come through with this $200 so I can get groceries this week.
Yes.
But 150,000, I don't know. That one might be too big for God. But it's like, is there really anything too big for God?
No,
Come on.
Exactly. And I'm just like thinking, He started this, and I'm like, Sarah, this is going to happen.
Yeah.
I don't know when, but and so at that point. One thing that was very important to me was that as soon as we know that this is going to happen, we need to bring the church body into it.
Yeah.
Because we want them to come on this journey with us. We want them to see that this is the will of the Lord. We want them to pray with us and experience like
Not
the mountains
be
move.
blindsided.
Yeah. And so we decided like, okay, so that was in May of 2024.
Okay.
And then I'm like, okay, we're going to announce it to the church in July. Like we set a date, and we very much wanted to take the whole Sunday. I was going to have her come up with me, and we were just going to explain the same thing we're explaining to you, the whole thing, because I wanted them to see this isn't something I'm like just choosing to do. I would never choose to leave you guys. Like I love you so much. Like this is something the Lord's telling me to do. And the Lord's not just my Savior. He's my Lord. Yeah. And I have to listen to Him.
Word. Yeah.
And so we as we're approaching that, there's one last thing that hasn't been solidified, and that's the guy that's going to replace me. So a couple years after I became lead pastor, I felt like the Lord told me who was going to replace me. I had no ambitions to leave. I didn't even know what that meant, but I felt like the Lord's like, you need to invest in this guy. And so he was an elder I brought on when I became pastor, and just longtime faithful dude. Led the men's ministry for men's Bible study for years.
Certainly somebody you just recognize the calling on.
Yeah, exactly. And so I remember sitting down with him after I felt like the Lord told me this and telling him, man, I don't know what this means. I have no timeline to leave or anything, but I think the Lord told me you're going to replace me someday. So I'm here to invest in you however you need me to be, so you're ready for that, you know? And he was like, no way, I'm not interested in that. And I'm like, that's totally cool, because I said the same thing. The Lord will convince you if it's supposed to be you. So when I got asked to pray about going to London, I mean, I told him right away, you need to pray about like whether you're supposed to step in as lead pastor, because I really still think you're the guy. And so he really wrestled with that whole year, because he, much like me, had another job. He ran his own business, was a faithful dude in so many different aspects. Everyone else recognized this call in his life. Anytime anyone would ask me if I had like somebody in mind to replace me, if I was ever called to go, I'd always turn it around on them and they'd always say the same guy. So everyone else saw it, but he did not see it in himself so when I told him I'm going to go make that announcement, like he's like, yeah, I'm still wrestling with the Lord. I said, it's fine. We don't need to tell anyone who's replacing me yet. I just want them to know, so I can start being with them in this process of preparing for this. And so he decided, like, okay, well, that week before I announced it, he's like, I'm going to go up on the mountain. I'm going to spend a night alone with the Lord. This is just what I do when I really need to hear from the Lord. Pray for me that he would speak to me. And he went up, and the next day he came down, and he was just a different man.
Yeah.
Like he was so struggling up to that point because he just wanted to hear from the Lord. And he really believed the Lord spoke to him that night, and gave him the confidence he needed. And he was like, all right, I'm ready to do this because I really believe the Lord's told me.
Tell him how the Lord's...
Well, he went up there really kind of arguing by his own accord, like arguing with the Lord. Why, Lord,
a little bit of Peter in him.
Ain't I being faithful? Like, why are you asking? And he said, the Lord lovingly, but very kind of like a stern father with his finger in your chest, just said, because I choose, and I choose you. And he's like, that's all I need to know.
Well,
that's all I need to know.
We've been talking about the kingdom of God on this podcast a lot, and you already said it. A lot of people might say they have Jesus as a savior, but not a Lord, but you can't separate those two.
Yes.
If he is savior, he is Lord.
Yes.
And he has to be both in your life.
Yes.
And that's a perfect example of somebody who is submitted to Jesus Christ being the Lord of their life.
Amen.
That's right.
So God provided this amazing amount of money. Now he's provided the person to take over the church.
Yep. So we announced it to the church. We go through that transition for about a year. The whole time we're going through that, the Lord's chipping away at that 30,000. That 30,000. We have like an ungodly number. I mean, it's so expensive to live in London. Like we sat down, did a budget with the people that live there.
Are you going to be bivocational?
So here's our intent, like the current pastor, the church is able to pay a small amount as a parsonage to cover his home.
Yeah.
But they can't pay a salary. So he's supported as a missionary.
Okay.
So that's how we were approaching it. All right, we'll see what the Lord does. Because the call is to
rent's not cheap in London.
No. So so the call's to be a pastor. So I'm like, all right, in order to pastor full time like him, I'm going to have to be supported as a missionary. But because of our visas, the option to work part-time is there. So I'm like, Lord, I've done this before. If you want me to do that, I'm willing to do it. I'm just going to let you. We've always been inspired by people like George Mueller that, I don't know if you know who that is,
absolutely.
but just this mentality of if the Lord's asking you to do something, he knows what your needs are. Let him provide them.
And I think, I think that's, it speaks to the faith and the faithfulness that you're showing to the Lord, because it's like young people coming into ministry. It's like, I'm going to get into that pastoral position. I'm going to be full-time ministry, and that's going to be it. That's what I'm going to do for the rest of my life. But even Paul said he learned how to abound with a lot and a little.
Yes.
And it wasn't like he went, this American mindset is kind of like we all start out poor and humble, and then we achieve more money over time. But I don't think it was like that. I think Paul had a lot, and then he went to a little, and there's ups and downs and all of that. Yeah. And I think, our trajectory isn't this financial gain in life of, we had a little and now we're going to have a lot, or I only get paid by the church and don't have to work another job. No, the mindset is if God's calling you to be bivocational, he'll give you the grace for that, and you'll be joyful.
That's
Amen.
Right.
You'll be joyful doing it. And who knows what ministry you might find at that other job too.
And the important thing is just be surrendered to God's plan.
Yeah.
Because there's a reason for it.
Yeah.
Even if he wants me to work, there's a reason for it. So it's like, I don't want to box him in and try to define what his will is for me. It's like, I just want to be open and led. And that's the best place you can be, because that's when you're going to be in the will of the Lord, which is good, pleasing, and perfect. And so we approach it like the whole time is like, okay, we're going to do our diligence to figure out what we need to live there, but we're just going to trust the Lord to provide. And so over the last year, he's put on churches' hearts and people's hearts to support us. We came up with an anticipated budget, which was huge, based off of
a yearly budget?
Yeah, a monthly budget.
Monthly budget, okay.
Based off of what you can expect to pay for a house there. So like there's some factors here. Like the average 3-bedroom, 1-bath, like flat, like apartment there is about $3,500 to $4,500 US, unless God does something. That's just the average price.
Right.
There's a 34% loss in the American dollar. So like when you transfer money over there, you lose 34% because the pound's worth a lot more. Yeah. So those things figured into that. And so we had this budget, and one of our big prayers, half of that budget was housing because it's so expensive. So we're praying this whole year. The Lord's raising the funds for our visas. He raises that so we can apply for them. That was a big prayer because we've heard so many nightmares about the visa process. Like even when it's supposed to be straightforward, I mean, we had to turn in like this much paper. And so we didn't hear a peep out of them at all. They reviewed it, 35 days, got approval. Right around that time, a couple of months earlier, Pastor Rob had said, hey, the church board has this idea on just transferring the lease of the place he's in to us. So they could just keep paying the rent, which would cut our cost of living in half.
Yeah, that's a huge.
We were like, yeah, that would be amazing if that happened. Where he's living right now is it's a God thing. He's been in the same home for 15 years. It was a guy that inherited it from his mom. He redid the whole thing for his wife. She didn't like it. So he didn't want to sell it because there's a huge inheritance tax. He just wanted somebody to live in it that would keep it nice. Yeah. And so he's hardly ever raised the rent. It's way underpriced for what it's worth. And so Rob presented him with that idea. And at first, he wasn't really open to or he wondered whether he still wanted to rent it or not. But right after we got our visa approvals, he had a total change of mind. He's like, I'd love to rent it to them. Wow. I'll only raise it like £100 a month, which the church thinks they can still afford. Yeah. So for us, that like cut our cost of living in half. Yeah. To where with our current monthly support, we're not that far from being fully funded. What we think. Yeah. Again, I say that loosely because I'm like, the Lord knows what we need. Yeah. He's going to provide it one way or another. So I mean, that was just another couple mountains like the Lord just did to make us be able to go over there and live. Yeah. Like God has done this whole thing to give us 100% confidence. Because we're going into a foreign culture. We don't pretend to know British people. Right. We're going into a city, which we're country folk. We've never gone into that environment. It's super ethnically diverse. Yeah. I mean, where every couple miles, you're going to be into a whole new ethnic group, like in the city. So it's like, you're really like having to be like Paul, where you're learning to be all things to all people. Right. You're preaching the same gospel, you're preaching the same word, but you're coming at it from a different perspective because these people have different backgrounds and religions that they've been a part of. So I don't know any of that, but I definitely know God is with us. Because in what I've come to find out in ministry, that's the most important thing.
Well, it's far greater. You could know every language and everything about all those cultures and not know that God is with you. And that would be extremely discouraging. Yeah. To know God is with you and not know anything else.
And that's the one thing he repeated to Joshua over and over again. And that's a passage he gave me right when I was asked. Joshua 1, when he's going into the promised land. And he's like, be strong and courageous because I'm with you. Yeah. And for me, I know that God's with us. He's made that so clear. And I don't really need to know anything else. The rest of it, we're just along for the adventure. Yeah. That word keeps coming up and people praying with us. Adventure. And that's it's like, awesome. Honestly, I've kind of grown to learn, what's the Lord going to do? I know he's going to be good. I don't know what that's going to look like. But
I'd like to come visit London and eat some dainties and drink tea or whatever they do over there. Well, so next time we do an episode, we're going to do it there. I'll bring the equipment.
And that's an answer to prayer too, because this house that we're getting is so much more than we prayed specifically for a room to host home fellowship groups. Yeah. Because that's the way you minister there. Yeah. And then also for an extra room to host young people that want to come over and do an internship and be discipled. Yeah, that's awesome. And we have that. Yeah. And so like the Lord Ephesians 3:20, he does exceedingly more than we might ask or think. Yeah. And that's what he does.
And anybody who's been walking with the Lord for any amount of time, whether it's great, magnificent amounts of money or little bits of money, we all can see God doing those things in our life when we're walking in the calling that he has for us.
Amen.
And we got it, like you said, we got to step out in faith. You know, when Joshua crossed the river, God very specifically demanded the priests are going to go first with the ark of the Lord. The presence of God was going to go before, and they still had to take that step of faith with the presence of the Lord with them. And I hope that we can use this conversation, and we're going to link all your information. We got, I think we have most of it, but I'll double check. But we're going to link that all to the bottom of the episode. So anybody who's listening that wants to financially support you now. When it comes to future financial support, does it automatically go through the change from dollars to pounds for you guys?
Yeah. So how it works is we have like a mission organization in the U.S. that you can donate to. It's a 501 nonprofit, and like tax deductible and stuff. And then it goes to an account of ours where we're going to transfer that account to our British account when we get over there.
Okay.
And then it'll go through the currency exchange or whatever. It does that. They don't have to worry about that.
Yeah, and our hope, I do believe here at Beal Bible Church, we want to be supporting you guys and just tapping into the work that God is doing. So this conversation has been phenomenal for me to just sit here and hear the goodness of God in both of your lives. And we are able to do this digitally too. So once you get over there and get planted, we got to sit down and do this again and just hear some testimony of what's happening over there.
Yeah.
And stay in touch with you guys as, maybe like every 6 months or so, we can get together and have an episode just to see how God's working over there, how he's providing the things he's doing, and what we can be doing as fellow brothers and sisters in Christ here, and praying or providing or whatever it is that God might have us do.
And I would just encourage, pray for the harvest.
Yeah.
Like London's a city of 9 million people. That's more than the state of Oregon and Washington together.
Yeah.
And it's highly unchurched.
Right.
Like basically they have some knowledge of Jesus. You look at all these beautiful cathedrals that were built to worship him, but they're empty. And they're dead.
Yeah.
And so it's an overwhelming need. Yeah. And what I've heard is it's impossible to find Bible teaching churches. I mean, there's people that come from over an hour away to go to our church because they can't find a church that teaches the Bible.
Yeah.
So I really feel like the Lord is just like calling us like he called Philip to the Ethiopian, just somebody to come and use the word of God to explain the good news of Jesus.
Yeah, so. And it will prosper in that. If you're faithful in that, God will bless it. Faithful in little, right? We know what his word says. He it's just like you experienced at Coastline. You start to see the harvest come in, and hearing the whole story, or at least a big chunk of the story. I see even that as just preparation for what God is doing in you now, of this constant faithfulness. And we hope to be covering you in prayers. We know that there are obviously, even if it's not financial hurdles, there's other hurdles to have to get over. There's relational hurdles. There's getting there, and knowing that God is with you is the most important thing. But then finding those relationships with those people and building those relationships and starting your family there. And your new the family of Christ that's there. That's going to be your new family. So, well, I really appreciate you guys taking the time, and I'm glad we were able to do this before you guys go. Do you have a date of when you're going to leave?
We actually leave
a week from today.
Yeah, we drive down to San Francisco next Tuesday. We're staying in Ashland currently, Oregon. And then Wednesday we fly out one way to London.
Awesome. Well, like I said, we will stay in touch, and the next time we do this, we'll do it over the screens, or we will all do it in London together, drinking tea, eating crumpets, or whatever it is. I know they have coffee shops there too, but tea is a big thing. I guess I'd have to learn how to drink the tea right.
You guys
still
do drink coffee.
Yeah,
you can still drink coffee.
So, looking forward to just staying in touch with you guys through all of it, and hoping and praying for the blessing on your 4 boys over there, and especially at this time in their life. You're gonna probably end up with some beautiful English maybe new daughters. So, however God provides, it's just gonna be awesome. And again, thank you so much for taking the time. I'm glad that we were able to do this before you left, so we could actually sit face to face and do it. And what a blessing this episode is. And again, for all of our listeners, all of their information, their social media, how you can follow them, those sorts of things are all going to be linked at the bottom of the episode. And we will link the places where if you feel like you want to financially support them, that'll all be at the bottom too. And we'll keep that updated as we inquire of you guys as the future comes on.
Yeah.
All right.
Great.
Thank you
Thank
so
you.
much.
Yeah,
Thank
you're
you.
welcome. Thank
Amen.
both of you guys.